was a long, cold night, sitting beside my son's bed praying vehemently that God would spare his dear life for my sake. He was my only son, the precious fruit of my womb, and being a widow, my only hope for my old age. Without him, I would have no means of support. I would be vulnerable, a target to those who preyed upon the defenseless, those who preyed on a poor widow. I prayed that God would spare my son, the way he spared Sarah when her husband Abraham, in obedience to God's command, prepared to sacrifice their only son. I listened in the darkness as my son struggled to breathe, as his breaths became more shallow, slower, fewer, and then finally ceased. I called out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you deserted your poor widow? Why have you taken your young servant, my God?" My cries pierced the night and brought my neighbors. By dawn's light, the entire town knew. Everyone knew of my unfortunate fate. I had become like Naomi, a childless widow. And like her, I had no daughter-in-law who would care for me. I was alone. No husband, no son, no daughter. I was simply left alone. As 6 strong men carried my son's body through the gates of Nain, a man named Jesus stopped the procession.
"Do not cry,"
he said gently, touching my shoulder with one hand as he reached out to the coffin with his other. In a commanding voice, the man said,
"Young man, I tell you, get up."
Hope flared to life. My son sat up and began to speak.
His power is made perfect in my weakness.
The pallbearers set the coffin down, and Jesus helped my son rise. Our arms wrapped around each other. The mourning of the crowd turned into joy. They glorified God, saying,
"A great prophet has risen among us, and God has visited his people."
My son was dead, but now he was alive. I wept tears of joy. I poured out my thanks to God. Truly, our God is a God of power and compassion. Those who hope in him will never be ashamed. You have been listening to the story of God's compassionate heart and his personal attention to his people. The story of the widow of Nain from the Holy Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 7, 11 to 17. Try to imagine the scene. No one had ever seen a man do the miracles Jesus did or heard the words he spoke. Just like the widow and her son, God has power to restore us and give us a new life.